Hi everyone, my name's Lorraine and welcome to See Through the Big C. So this is a conversation all about cancer, and I'll be interviewing different people in the community, whether that's people diagnosed with cancer, healthcare professionals, or people caring for somebody with cancer. And I cannot wait to meet so many amazing people. So here we go. Hi Yasmin,
Hi.
welcome to See Through the Big C. It's so good to see you. I've known you for a very long time
Yes.
through the work at the Lewis Foundation, so I'm really excited to have you to share from a nursing and patient's perspective of what it's like on a cancer ward, because I've seen you at Talbot Butler in Northampton General Hospital for a long time, and what I always liked about you is the level of patient care that you give. It's always above and beyond, really thoughtful and really personalised to the individual. That's why I reached out and asked you in the first place.
Thank you. Well, I think it was, I think when you first came on the ward, I might have even been a healthcare assistant
Yes,
when
you
I was
were.
a student. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I used to do every Friday night,
Yeah.
because obviously I was at uni in the week, and
Yeah.
you'd come on, and it was you were personally there
Yeah.
every Friday without
Yeah,
fail.
I loved it.
And but the patients loved it.
Yeah.
You know, they got someone independent of us that wasn't in uniform.
Yeah.
To have that chat with, just to say, do you know what, we care, and sometimes they can't share with their family.
Yeah.
Because although it's their diagnosis, they're taking on the burden of those feelings.
Yeah.
So I'd always go in kind of for the evening meds round, and they'd be like, oh, we just spoke to this really lovely person. I said, I bet I know who it was.
Yeah, no, so thank you for always supporting us with that. So going back to the beginning, really, your journey into working in the cancer space, so is that something you always wanted to do before you did your degree?
I think I always wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah.
My mum's a nurse by trade. She's surgery.
Yeah.
Wounds and everything. So I was very familiar with it. And if I was ever poorly as a single parent, I'd be on the ward in the staff room rather than, because she had no other way of
looking after
care.
you.
Yeah. So I was very comfortable around hospitals. And she persuaded me, she said, don't be a nurse. The conditions aren't good, the pay's not good.
Yeah.
So I went and did a psychology degree first.
Okay, yeah.
Loved it, but then while I was there, my granddad had dementia, and was dying. And again, I saw really good nursing care and really bad nursing care, and my kind of drive just was still, no, I think I want to do this.
Was that to kind of give the good experience?
Yeah,
Is that what motivated you?
Yeah. And while I was at university doing psychology, everyone needs a bit of money.
Yeah.
So I used to clean on the surgical wards as well.
Oh, okay.
So I started as a cleaner, actually. Yeah. And I used to just speak to patients. There used to be so many lonely patients.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I'd go and help feed them and everything. So when I finished my degree, there was jobs that came up, and one of them was on Talbot Butler ward.
Nice.
It had a really good reputation. And I have never been scared of kind of having the harder conversations with people or around that kind of thing. I think I was brought up by my mum, who was always very genuine and open.
Yeah.
So it really interested me, and I thought, well, if I like the fundamentals of caring for them and washing them, and then I hopefully would like being a nurse.
Yeah.
Went on, loved it.
Yeah.
Did my nursing, and then I've never deviated. Had a lot of placements elsewhere just to check things, but no, just.
And that was, you found your place, and Talbot Butler Walls was a place that you found. So cancer care then was your first actually encounter of cancer care specifically.
It was,
Yeah, and how did you find it?
Well, I thought mostly, I mean, the camaraderie of the staff, it really is special.
Yeah.
You're going from a cardiac arrest to another room where you're trying to be normal. So the team is actually half of the reason that you love it. There's some really special individuals there. Yeah. But the patients, I mean, you could have a bad day by your standard and go in, and you'd think, I can't believe that troubled me, because these patients are...
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. Give you some perspective for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me put things to the back of my mind, if anything personal.
Yeah.
And just, I think, if you admire people that you look after, it's easy to look after them.
Yeah,
isn't it?
definitely. So how would a typical shift look like? Because I know it was a long shift, and there was it 28 beds or at that time? I know it's changed now. So how would a typical shift look like?
You would go in. So I guess it really depends on what you needed to do. you'd always go in a bit early, just in case the night shift was horrendous for them. You'd take handover for sometimes 12 patients at a time if we were really short-staffed. And then obviously you'd have your meds round, your drugs round and things like that. But a lot of the time you'd go from one conversation that was a new diagnosis to another conversation that could be an end of life, to your other patient who might be getting discharged, so they were really happy, to another conversation where they were telling their children. So every day was so varied. And then you had the stem cell transplants, the chemotherapy to give, at that time the emergency assessment bleep to hold because we didn't have an assessment day. And then sometimes the new doctors would be, you would be telling them with your experience, and other times you'd be asking for help. So it really varied.
And how did you find that patients were towards you? Were they quite open in terms of sharing intimate information about them that they probably wouldn't share with their families?
I think when you go in, you always have to be, in my experience, confident. So you don't have to pretend you know everything. I think that's the worst thing you can do. But just confident that if I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. I'll go and ask someone. You don't have to know everything, but you have to be reliable. So if you tell them at the beginning of their shift they were worrying about something, by the end of that shift you want to go back with the answer or your next steps of how you're going to find that answer. And I found that you could build trust really quickly that way. And the tricky ones, because a lot of people either they open up or they really shut down.
How do you deal with the ones that shut down?
Carry on trying. I think there's always a reason that they shut down. I genuinely believe no one's ever horrible or kind of obtrusive for any sort of reason other than mostly fear. You know, it manifests differently in all of us. So I think you just listen, you keep trying, you keep showing up, and they learn to see that you do care. You're not just there to do a job. You're not just they're not just a number on your handover, but you keep caring. And they eventually learn to trust you, and that can take a shift, it can take a week, it can take sometimes a year,
which is a long time, isn't it?
Well, I remember we had a patient on the ward, this was in my Macmillan role, and unfortunately the patient had just lost their spouse, and were diagnosed at the same time, and it was all very sudden, and they were in for ages, lost their mobility, and wouldn't talk to anyone. So I went in every single day, no matter what I got from them. Sometimes it was nothing, sometimes it was hello, sometimes it was a bit more. And I remember with my support worker, Abby. So we went in together, and we just offered to wash and clip their feet just because they had no family to come in. They were a bit, I guess, proud. Understandably proud. And actually by just, you know, me and Abby having a bit of a conversation, including them and washing and clipping their feet, we broke a barrier and didn't think we had. They got discharged, and then a couple of months later we just received a random Christmas card through the post with this lovely like letter in. So I think just chipping away, and again for him that was something that showed we cared, and we wanted to do something rather than just keep talking about the cancer, the treatment.
And do you think that's important as well, rather take that kind of that purely being treated as a medical rather than a person?
I think so. I think, you know, I guess if you were to take yourself, if you were ever in that situation, you probably wouldn't, that would be the least of your worries, because that's getting attended to. You'd think about family, and actually you'd probably mostly think about your charity and who's going to run it and who's going to do this, you know. So once we can kind of hone in on that, I think you get that they're kind of a bit more than able to comply with their other care, and they know that you care. So if you can show that at the beginning, when you then have to have the harder conversations with them about maybe the treatment isn't working or what are we going to do, they trust you. And often in that consultation with the consultant, they'll ask for you. They'll say, but what's your opinion? And, you know, the consultant sometimes can be a bit taken back. And you're like,
excuse me.
And you're like, I'm not pretending to know more, but they're asking me because they genuinely believe I have their best interest and I see them as a whole.
Which is really important. Which is really important. So one of the elements that you deal with is end-of-life care, and I know that's something I've seen you deal with on the ward itself. I know for a lot of people that can be quite a scary experience, but you always seem to just go in and it was no different. You treat the person as if they were not going to die.
Yeah.
How do you manage that situation? How do you find it so effortless to do that?
I think you have to be open to not know everything. So it's something that you can't predict.
Yeah.
You know, people that you think might go downhill quite fast don't, and vice versa. But again, I think you just have to look at that patient, and I really believe that we have a chance to get a good death right. And I think a good death can be just as therapeutic in a lot of people's grief journey and their journey.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's just looking at the little things. Actually, the really obvious things is, are they in pain? Are they in distress? What might that be?
Yeah.
But it's just, I think, upskilling yourself. Have I got the tools in my toolkit to deal with this?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think everyone has a different skill set.
Yeah.
Genuinely, an IT error system at work, if the printer doesn't work, I lose it.
Yeah, IT's not my thing.
So, you know, if I walk in and my printer just can't print, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
But if it's a life or death situation, I think, again, I'm not too proud to ask for help. So if I'm not aware of something, I'll go and ask a colleague that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give an example of a moment from what you've done for somebody who was end of life to help that patient and their family so that they have a good death as you've described?
Yeah. Trying to think of different ones where I won't necessarily be incriminating.
Yeah, of course.
Breaking confidentiality. So recently we had a patient that mentioned when he was diagnosed, he was upset to come in because he missed his glass of red wine. That is a tradition every Friday. He went downhill within 2 weeks. And on the day that we had to switch him to end-of-life care, I just took a bottle of red wine in.
Oh, nice.
And it changed his whole demeanour.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, you're not just giving me a bad hand here. You're saying we can't change anything, but I hear you, I see you.
Yeah.
You mentioned this thing to me.
And you remembered,
Yeah. And then back to one of my first deaths on Talbot Butler, there was a lady on my night shift who had just witnessed her husband pass. She was 89 and had no one else in her family. She was going home to an empty house. Waiting for a taxi. So I just said, my break's in half an hour. Can you wait? And I'll take you home.
That's really sweet.
And I took her in, put the kettle on, just made sure she was comfortable. And thought nothing of it. It doesn't.
You just do it.
Well, I think anyone would, really.
But they don't, though, do they?
I think everyone does in their own way, maybe.
Yeah. But that's the next level of care, would you describe, for a nurse?
I think it can be. I think, again, there's a... I think I'm a big empath. I always put myself in their shoes and think, do you know what? And that's another part of dealing with end-of-life situations. I can't take their grief away. I'm never going to be able to. But what can I do in the immediate moment? What's within my sphere of control? Because I can't make the person not unwell. And I can't make the situation any better. But what is the tiniest thing that could chip the iceberg and just try and help a little bit?
Yeah, which it does seem to make a difference.
I hope so.
Yeah, it definitely does make a difference. So sometimes when we talk about people in the hospital settings, especially on cancer wards, people say it's a really depressing, negative place. What would you say about that?
I don't know. I think it can be. But I think it depends. I think if you go in as the nurse saying, right, what are we going to do today? Shall we make sure we have... and it is very resource dependent. So obviously, no one goes into cancer care with the aim of not going the extra mile. It is very resource... But actually, we're going to find a time to get you outside today. You haven't been outside in a week. Let's get you in the chair. Let's go outside. Let's just get some fresh air. And then let's come back in. And that's our milestone. And often you see friendships. You know, we both know of people that have,
formed friendships.
Exactly, and they're still in touch with each other.
Which is amazing to see,
So I think post-COVID is a bit more tricky. But pre-COVID, when they were all walk in the laps around the ward.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was easier to see those connections forming, and it's really nice to witness people that probably would never have connected together in society actually come together, which you must see a lot of.
Yeah, and gather that. And I think charities like yours really help, because you've got, you take what could be a really scary admission, your volunteers yourself, you always take time to talk to the patients. And you bring resources. We have a lot of patients that go without, so they have crosswords in your packs to get rid of their kind of overthinking, and they have different, sweets to suck on after the horrible radiotherapy that they have. So all of those little things make it a bit more bearable. And then some things that you used to do, birthday boxes. Tell us about that, because they're just those little extra things that remind people that they actually matter. They're not just a cancer patient. I think I got the idea from my nan, where she said, I know I'm old, but I love my birthday. I thought, good on you. And actually, whenever it's been someone's birthday and I've quickly popped to get some cake or balloons or something, and then decorated their room in the hospital, they get so much from it. Their family sees they're being cared for. They think, do you know what? I'm not just a patient. So I thought, if I do some birthday boxes, it doesn't. It means that any patient, if I'm on shift or not, can just have access to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then one thing that I really loved that you did was, when sometimes people are about to pass away, they like to get married as their final thing, and that you even helped with in terms of ensuring there was wedding arrangements on Talbot Butler Ward. Have you got a particular memory of an occasion where you've put a wedding together at very short notice?
Yeah, there was two actually. So one, I remember, I think I literally chased one of the officiants down there to try and get the paperwork signed off. And I think it was a really good team effort. Everyone came together. We did it in our assessment bay. And it just, for the people that are having to go through it, including the staff, I think it's therapeutic for the staff as well, with the moral injury that can happen. But for the actual patient and their family, again, one, it shows you care, but that horrible hospital memory is now a lovely one. Instead of a place where that person passed, it's a place where you got married. Run into the market to get the flowers. And then one of my old, I'll be honest, as a HCA, the patient, her grandma and her mum, the granddaughter and the mother that passed away, and then they opened their own bridal shop, and they messaged me and said, we remember your care, we really appreciate it. If you ever have anyone get married, please let us know and we'll donate a dress. So we take, we have a lot of people that are really generous,
and we're helping that way as well.
And
you can reach out to
together.
And I've seen pictures, and when you do it, and it's really beautiful. And I think what I'm trying to share by you telling these stories is that there are those moments where you try to do everything you can to make people feel that they're important and they matter still. And that's what I really love.
Thank you. I always call my husband a civilian.
I bet he gets dragged into all sorts of projects.
Yeah, well, I remember it was our first date. It was our third date, but it was our first official kind of out date. Because I made him Zoom me twice just to check our
just make sure.
And I remember there was a patient in Bay 2, and every year she decorated a stone and put it on her husband's grave, and she was so gutted she couldn't do it, and I couldn't. He was like, "You're clearly not interested," and I said, "No, I'm just thinking about this stone that I've got to try and get by tomorrow. I start at 7." So he drove me all the way back to his house to pick up a stone, to drive me all the way back to the restaurant to sit decorating it with him there. And I thought, if that hasn't put him off, then great. But I remember taking it in the next day and saying to her, "I'll go and put it on the grave for you," because his grave was actually where my sister's buried. So it was, I could make... and I remember sending her a photo, and she was so chuffed.
I can imagine.
But again, that just took away a lot of her worries. And then luckily let Ben know what he was in for.
Because then he's going to... all the activities he's going to be involved in. And what does he think of your role and what you do?
I think at times it's hard as any sort of healthcare individual, depends on what job, and even with your your job, to come home and explain the weight of your day. So I think at times he probably wishes I'd share more, but I think it's like a defensive mechanism. But he goes with it really well. So like I said, he's been to a lot of funerals with me, because I'm very privileged to get invited. And I think even in our wedding speech, he said, "This is the first time I'm dressed up in a suit with you that's not a funeral." And he's really good. You know, I'll always put stuff in our shopping basket in the weekly shop, and he'll go, "That's for a patient, isn't it?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, okay.
It is,
So he really is good at taking it on the chin. Sometimes I think he still is frustrated if I come home late, as anyone would be.
Yeah, which it happens.
But you can't really merit your time.
Yeah, you can't really predict it. 'Cause like you said, if somebody needs that extra bit of care, then you will stay longer.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that obviously since becoming a mum a few years ago, the one thing recently that I went on a study day for that I realised I don't do as well as I'd like, is actually patients who are parents. So I'm doing a big project about that now in Milton Keynes. Because if you ask me how I supported them, I'd tell you I think I do okay. And then I went to the study day, and I don't even think we touched the surface. It was a lot about how what children think can give you cancer, and a lot of patients don't tell the children because they think they're helping, but actually children know.
They do know.
They read letters, they hear, then they hear the stories at school. Then it affects their eating. You know, actually, there's a lot.
Knock-on effect.
And just aware to signpost people. So I think there's so many things still to learn.
That's an area. I suppose would you have had much interaction with children on the ward? Anyway?
Quite a lot.
Because they would come in and visit their family member.
And we had our young patient pass away in room 17 when I started. When I was qualified, and I remember we tried to cheer her up one day, and we played Bean Boozled.
Oh, did you?
We played Bean Boozled with her, and I got a bean that tasted like gras. Oh gosh. But she had a child, and we were helping her record videos. And then another patient, you probably knew him in 15. He had a young child, and we did letters. And I think it's always quite a tough part of my job when we're planning ahead when they're not going to be there.
And how do you deal with that then?
Again, try and circle of control. You know, sometimes it is okay to go and have a little cry in the toilet, or sometimes I just have to put a sad film on at night and just let it out. And then,
that way.
But so a lot with children, and obviously any family member that has a child or grandchild, it's their first priority. But you find patients often accept more treatment because they think it's helping, or don't tell. And actually sometimes the secondary parent doesn't get support either. So quite an interesting thing to look at.
That's interesting. And you must find naturally, even though you're supporting the person that's in hospital or having treatment, you're also supporting the family members as well. Is that what you find?
I'd say 50-50. Yeah, absolutely. Because the person with the diagnosis often is so busy and has the adrenaline and has, but the person at home feels so helpless. There's nothing they can do. They're working often as well, trying to pick up, drop off, support, look after the kids, or anyone else, look after the household, the dog.
Yeah, that's true. And in your work, and when you were in that period of time, and you dealt with any type of cancer? So you didn't specialise in a particular area? It was any type?
And even when I did specialise, I used to...
Because you moved into...
Haematology. So blood cancers. But I still used to support on the ward and bank in the acute oncology service and things. I like cancer.
And what was it like on the haematology ward?
Haematology is...
Because that's more daytime, whereas Talbot Butler was 24/7.
Yeah, it's a really nice mix. The patients are so special. They're often really long-term, very chronically poorly, because it doesn't normally just affect one area. But again, so resilient. The team is obviously quite close-knit, which is nice as well. And the consultants are some of the most human people I've ever met. stay 10 hours late in their own time just to make sure a patient is okay. And I think they're behind the scenes what you don't see often.
It's true, And so how long were you on that ward for?
So I was there as a Macmillan nurse on there for 5 years. And then I've just recently turned to Milton Keynes now, where I got offered the lead haematology nurse, which is quite exciting.
And what is that going to allow you to do in terms of for your skill development?
It's really good. So hard to put into words, really. I get clinical oversight of the whole nursing service in haematology. I have a really incredible nursing team there. So that includes your red cell, so like your sickle cell patients as well. But includes just being responsible for how the care is given to our cancer patients. So all of your holistic needs and things like that. Running a nurse-led chemotherapy clinic, running a nurse-led... So especially with chronic conditions, so AMLs, CLLs, low-grade lymphomas, patients are on active monitoring and they find it really tricky. Patients on treatment feel like they're doing something. And these patients can be on active monitoring for years. So I pushed really hard to start a nurse-led clinic for them. So instead of being seen by different registrars where they get a very short review, are you okay, your bloods are okay, great, bye, 3 letters in the clinic letter. They come in, they see me, we do a full physical assessment so they feel like they've been checked with their lymph nodes. We do a full holistic assessment. We talk about how they keep healthy in case they need treatment. And just a bit more kind of in-depth review. And the feedback from that has been really incredible. So they sent out some surveys afterwards asking if they'd rather have been seen by a doctor. And I think they surveyed 82 patients and only one said yes.
Oh wow, that's huge.
And all of the rest said actually we prefer this service because we get a bit more in depth. And that's not that the doctors aren't competent, but we just have a bit more time to go through everything. Absolutely. And
make them feel heard about
so it's like the top of our skill set. But obviously for a doctor with a really complex clinic, they haven't got the time
to deal with that. And you mentioned about the holistic element. Is that something that's becoming more popular?
Really popular.
Because you didn't used to hear that as much before.
So it's in the 10-year cancer plan and as well prehabilitation. So actually, especially with our patients that are on active monitoring, we know they're going to get to treatment eventually, so, or most of them. So actually we want them to be in a good healthy position, but what are we doing to encourage that? Are we helping them keep fit? Are we telling them please hydrate yourself and you know keep a balanced diet, or are we just saying we don't need you right now? So it's quite a big emphasis on that.
And would you say a big shift from what there was before?
So we're being proactive now rather than reactive. Again, resource dependent. But I think if you're diagnosed with cancer now versus even 5 years ago, you'd feel a big difference.
You mentioned about the cancer plan, because I know that's just come out last month. You've mentioned it. Could you share like briefly, because I know it's like about a 100-page document, what that would mean for cancer patients going forward? What's the hope that it would do for cancer care? So
the hope is that you get a lot more treatment faster and closer to home. So things like your checkups and things, or your blood tests can all be done within the community a bit more, and by your GP service, by district nurses. I have to say, I think it's going to be tricky and challenging. Resources to have everyone come to a hospital versus you go out everywhere is very difficult. But for the patient,
it'd be great. It'd be great.
They want to focus more on prehabilitation. So, you know, especially if you're having things like a surgery to remove your cancer, how to get you fit to ensure you recover. And that translates to our stem cell patients as well. And faster diagnostics. We've got all the diagnostic clinics open. They're doing a lot of gene testing, a lot of genomics, which is fantastic. And they did do, I think we did trial it at Northampton. I don't know if you heard of it, the Galleri trial.
No, I didn't hear of that.
It didn't take, I think they're not continuing to plan it on. But basically, I don't know if you saw them in Tesco car park. There was like big vans. And it said if you're healthy and between the ages of 50 to 70, come for this blood test. And the blood test had markers of potential cancer, and then you get sent on a 2-week wait pathway.
Oh, okay.
But I think more things like that will come in to test people.
Yeah.
Although I don't know where the resources will come.
Be able to do that in the first place.
Yeah.
But at least it's been looked at. Yeah, at least it's been looked at as potential ways to improve it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then holistic care was big.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I was going to say, from your perspective, from what you've seen, what would you say are a couple of things that you think would actually improve cancer care for patients and their families?
Okay.
Because you seem to have loads of ideas that you've thrown out.
I think too many, don't I?
No,
yeah.
I love it.
Interesting. I think at Milton Keynes, I've been given a really lovely opportunity to really trial some things. So, which is really exciting. Really exciting, yeah. So we are trialing things like more specialised nurse-led clinics, and they're not always the answer, and they can be abused with patient numbers. But I do think that if we're seeing a patient regularly and actually they're kind of straightforward and within our capacity, you know, we have so many patients that come and see the doctor. They're too afraid to say, actually, I've been really sick with this treatment. But we're sitting there like, you've not said anything. Whereas when they then come and see us. So I think some more nurse-led services like that. And just the back to basics. So, you know, the discharge phone calls from your CNS team, your post-diagnosis phone calls, just the really little things to try and pick everything up. I think if you can get the small fundamentals right, everything else falls into place. And will flow from that. And sometimes when we think about holistic care, we do the same for every patient holistically, but it's not the same. No, everyone's different. You know, everyone has to have this holistic needs assessment at these different points. I really believe in those assessments, but I think it is really tricky to try and time it. Every pathway is different, every cancer behaves differently. But even just going from Northampton to Milton Keynes, you must have seen a shift in the demographic of patients. You know, Northampton has so many lymphomas. Myeloma is really prevalent in the Milton Keynes population. They're a lot more diverse as well. You know, we get a lot of ethnic minorities from London, from Milton Keynes. So nationally they try and put across everything the same, and I think it doesn't work. It's not possible. I think it you need definitely benchmarks and quality control like that, but then you need individual demographics in your hospital to see which communities you need a bit more help with. And because you've touched on communities, something I wanted to ask about in terms of how do you address working with different ethnic communities, because everyone, even they might have the same type of cancer as somebody else, they're still you have to just get stuck in. Absolutely. So in Northampton, I remember a really challenging case with a Jehovah's Witness patient, and instead of thinking along the lines of, well, you can't have any treatment then, like that's your, you know, we can't do anything for you, we can't take the risk. Myself and my consultant really looked into, well, what can we do? Could we do a medication that boosts your own cells to then try this treatment, and as long as you know the risks, we can, you know, and then in Milton Keynes we have a lot of ethnic minority groups, and there's a lot of taboo around cancer and talking about cancer. We had a lady, unfortunately, whose family didn't want to let her know she had cancer. So it's really tricky, but I think you just have to take the time to book the interpreter at every appointment, and you know, yes, it takes a bit longer, but once you've broken that barrier, it gets a bit easier to be able to have those conversations. But I think there's still a lot to be done. I think I was really guilty of shying away from language barriers at the beginning of my career, because there's not actually, for healthcare professionals, many resources that are immediately available. Everything has to be planned in. So if you need to have an ad hoc discussion, it's really tricky. Because then you'd have to find like an interpreter and everything else. And we often use our own staff, which they're fantastic, but actually it's not fair on them. That's true. But another discrepancy I found when I was in my Macmillan role was we had a patient who was going to be starting on a new treatment for CLL. She was deaf. So she can't contact the assessment bay. That's true. So I said to them, do you have any provisions? Well, no, she'd have to get a family member. I said, she doesn't have anyone. Well, what do you mean? I was like, it's not for you to question that. But if she doesn't have one. So I actually got them to introduce a text phone, which they weren't happy with me too much because then they had to check it. But they were really gracious about it. It was just because they're so busy.
Yeah.
But then that person that's hard of hearing has access equally as you or I would.
Which you wouldn't have thought about, actually.
Yeah.
Now you've said that, yeah.
But when you think about care, we think we're being really great with all types of people. And like I said to you, I thought I was fine with patients who were parents, and actually just that little bit of learning, I was really ignorant, actually.
But then you learn as you go along, though, don't you? And your skill set develops. And like when you start, you didn't know, like sometimes what I used to find about when I go onto the ward, everyone's in their room, you don't know what someone's going to be like until you open the door, so you have to be reacting to the situation that you're in. So it is a learning all the time. I've learned so much as well.
And just be willing to learn. I think it's really easy to think as a clinician, I know best, and but actually our patients, all we have to do is equip them with the knowledge, and as long as they've got informed knowledge, we just have to respect their decision. Yeah,
of course. One of the things that comes up with us a lot is after somebody's told their cancer is gone, they feel like they're just kind of left. And then they don't know what to do now. Is that something you still find?
I think it's the hardest part. I think it's really hard because often your adrenaline kicks in, you're going through treatment, you've got a purpose for 6 months while you're having treatment, say. And then we say, okay, you're in the clear, goodbye. And they say, oh, okay, but I was coming in every week. You were checking my bloods. I had that visible mark of what was going on. I think it's impossible. I think the resources stop. Mostly, obviously, the Macmillan nurses will always support, but they can't be there as much as maybe you need. And actually, sometimes you want proactive call rather than to try and bother someone because you're trying to show you're coping with it.
Yeah, it's true.
But you might be left with chemo fog, you might be left with tricky veins, you might be left with a little bit of fear every time a lump pops up. Your body image might be completely gone, which means your relationship is different. Your parenting with your children is different, your work is different, people kind of treat you very delicately, or 2 years in to your recovery they forget that you had cancer. And actually you're still recovering. I've got a really good friend that is still having the effects of her treatment. She had cancer when she was 2 and it's affected her fertility, so actually now she's in her 30s, she's still feeling the benefit, the knock-on effect of that, but because no one that she knows now really knew her when she was 2, they don't necessarily give her the grace, and actually it's a big thing. It
is a big deal. And what do you think the answer is for that?
Again, I think maybe more resources into that, more acceptance of us as a society. Not, we all really accept someone when they say they've got cancer, but if you hear I had cancer 3 years ago, it's such a common thing now. You're like, oh, okay, so did this person and that person. But actually the impact of it shouldn't be minimized.
No.
But I think it all comes down to resources and education.
Yeah, it's true.
We focus on, you've got cancer right now, that must be awful. And it's amazing because you're cancer free, but you were robbed of something with that cancer. So although there's amazing silver linings, you're allowed to still feel a bit disheartened.
It's a lot to go through.
It's a grief process.
I would say so.
And I think it's really confusing to the person and the people around them because they're so happy the cancer's gone. But there's still I guess an anger there, which is fair enough. Do people still get in contact with you afterwards? You still hear from people? And it genuinely is just my favourite. Where's my keys actually? It was my first ever present from a patient as a HCA. It's a bottle opener. It looks horrendous, but they still it's their family member because they passed away. But they'll still send me a Christmas card every Christmas.
That's really thoughtful. That shows the impact of what you made.
But I just think these patients are incredible.
Yeah, they are.
I think they're so special. And they go through so much. So when one of the ideas, many ideas
that
me and my colleague Abby had was that actually after the initial part of your treatment and you're in remission, we invite you back to a small clinic kind of 6 months afterwards with just 4 other people, just so you can either make connections if you want to, but just kind of have 4 sessions to see how you can then continue to live well with. And then we've given you that period to kind of adjust back, and then actually we can see what comes up for you.
Yeah, it's true. I love that. Really good. I was going to say, you've been dealing with this day in, day out for like years. How do you stay so positive with what you're doing? How do you manage that?
I think I just try and be grateful, you know. I think it really changes your perspective, and that can be tricky because it can change how you empathise with things that aren't big. So, you know, if your friend works in an office and says, oh, I've had an awful day because they took away my free 15-minute break, but I still get an hour free, and you're sitting there thinking, what break? You know?
I haven't had a break.
But to them, that's
a big deal.
So it's tricky, but I think sometimes I see patients and they just want to enjoy a cup of tea outside in the garden. So when you've got your cup of tea outside in the garden, you think, what a nice moment. Or the fact that, you know, I have to sit with Robin every night because he wants me to go to sleep for half an hour in his room at least. And I genuinely think, I've got so many patients that would kill for this. Yeah,
it's true.
So I'm not taking this for granted.
Yeah. I totally get that. I think it's changed my perspective as well, I have to admit, because the things that I used to see as like a big deal, it doesn't matter anymore. And I have to admit, like when you talk about, say, your friend says something and you're like, in the grand scheme of things, that's not, and you have to kind of remind yourself that is
that's their reality.
That's their reality. But in terms of like appreciation for just the simplistic things in life, I totally get it. It does change your mindset.
Yeah, and then I think it can. You have to kind of be very mindful, because then I don't ever want to not give value to someone else's day either. And obviously sometimes you know, I remember coming home and being late because there was a cardiac arrest. I was covering the doctor strike, so was already a very tough day stepping up anyway. And then I got home and Robin had been a bit tricky for Ben, and he was cooking dinner, and I was thinking, but I've just been to a cardiac arrest, and Ben was like, but I feel really stressed, and I'm thinking, very different. But then I was like, no, that's his reality. I have to accept that. And kind of that has to be important too. So to kind of balance out a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So what's your next plans then in your next chapter?
Oh gosh, I think so I'm just finishing my master's in advanced practice in cancer care. So the project I'm going to do is about patients who are parents.
Perfect.
So I think just try and embed that. Kind of grow the team at Milton Keynes. And just, I guess, just see what the patients want from it. So with the 10-year cancer plan, actually, what are they asking for?
Yeah, it's true.
What are they wanting from us? How can we help them? Sometimes I think the best people to ask are
they? They're the people to ask. So thank you, Yasmin, for sharing your story. Like I said from the outset, like for me, you kind of define what I would imagine like a nurse to do in terms of patient care, because like I said, I saw you every week in the hospital. Everyone can show up as a nurse, but it was those extra elements of things that you did, that you went above and beyond, like the birthday boxes, like giving somebody that gift of a wedding, and you remembered every detail about the patients and their families. So I remember you used to come to the desk and you'd be like, oh, that patient would need that, or that person needs that, and you just remembered and you cared. So thank you for everything you do, because it means the world to everybody, and it's appreciated and noted. So thank you for sharing your story.
Having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you. You are, honestly.
I think the same to you though. Like honestly, I like.
Thank you for listening to the See Through the Big C podcast. I hope you took a lot of value from the stories that is shared, and that it hopes to either educate, motivate, or inspire you to take action. So thank you for listening.